It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting, either through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. We had a guest on earlier this week named, what's his name? Potiphar's wife. Kieran Tapsell wrote this book called Potiphar's Wife, The Vatican Secret and Child Sexual Abuse. And out of that came our guest today, who is named Jules McGool. And she runs this website called pontifalsecret.com, which is covering pretty much the same topics. Ms. Jules McGool, are you there?
Yes, I am, Ed. Thank you for having me.
So, yeah, it's been a pleasure so far. We've been chatting off the air. You seem like a delightful woman. Tell us about yourself. No, I'm serious. I'm really enjoying this already. Tell us about yourself. Who is Jules McGool?
Jules McGool I am Julie Cameron. Jules McGool's is a registered trademark in the United States of America and Australia, and it came about when I wanted to start an online vintage store. But when I had that website, some things have happened. My mum had a fall, and I'm caring for her, and then we've had the pandemic, and I then decided to have another website instead, and that is pontificalsecret.com. And the reason for pontificalsecret.com is my interest in the issues around clerical child sexual abuse. But I guess, who is Julie Cameron? Julie Cameron is an angry, baptised, non-practicing Catholic, and I am no longer a Catholic. I don't identify as a Catholic, but I come from the most beautiful family, wonderful family of Catholics. My mother is a Catholic, practicing Catholic, and she's a beautiful woman of faith. I have members in my family who are still practicing Catholics, and I guess to thank you for having me to talk today is a helpful way to explain where I sit in terms of the issues around clerical child sexual abuse and how I juggle my relationships with people, my family, friends, other people who are still my friends who are Catholic, and to explain too that I am not anti-Catholic. In fact, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my mother's faith. My parents had 6 children. I'm number 5, and when she went to the doctor and learnt that she was having me, the doctor offered her an abortion. And of course, my mother was never going to have an abortion. That was just not in her head at all. But by the same token, her story and the way she tells it to me, this is my birth story or my conception story, is that she says that she came out of that doctor's surgery. She was crying. It was raining. There was a truck coming down the street, and she wanted to throw herself under it. I mean, that's the level of stress and whatever, that learning that child number 5, like 6 children, mum and dad had 6 children under the age of 8 and no multiple births. And so, I try and tell that story just so that people can understand. On some level, I feel as though, well, you know what, quite possibly in another family or under different circumstances, I may not be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you here. We got lucky number 5. We got lucky. Okay. Now, Miss Cameron, off the air, I was asking you if there was anything you wanted to promote, and you right away you said there was a film about Richard Sipe called Sipe, Sex, and the Priesthood that can be found at the Salem Film Festival website. They can download it for free until March 4th. What is the film about?
I'm so sorry, Ed. I'm so sorry. You don't download it for free, and it's Sipe, Sex, Lies, and the Priesthood. It's a video on demand from here in Australia. I was charged $10 US, and I had access to it for 48 hours. And yes, it is Richard Sipe, passed away a couple of years ago now, and they have just released a movie about him. And the reason I bring him up is because Kieran Tapsell's book, Potiphar's Wife, Kieran references some of the work of Richard Sipe in his book, and he's an extremely important figure in bringing attention to the crisis of clergy sex abuse in the Catholic Church. But yes, it's $10 US to access.
Gotcha. Okay, which is still a drop in the bucket for a great film. Now, on your website, the pontificalsecrets.com, what would we find there if we go to this website, pontificalsecret.com? What would we find there?
Well, the aim of it, first off, I think one of the reasons that I put it there is so that you can go directly to a document, which Kieran Tapsell did reference the other day, and that is the instruction, the confidential instruction. The one I have in front of me is dated 1962, but I believe it was originally issued in 1922, and this is a reissue, and that's the document that is marked confidential. Says, from the Supreme and Holy Congregation of the Holy Office. It's an instruction on the manner of proceeding in cases of solicitation. Now, this document, you and I and anybody else who looks at it was never supposed to see it. We can thank an American by the name of Stanley P. Staney for putting it on the internet, and I think it ended up on the internet around about 2003, so about a year after the Boston Globe 2002 revelation. So if it wasn't, Kieran, the other day when I listened to your podcast, he mentioned Kieran, but he didn't mention him by name, and I think it's really, really important that Timothy P. Staney is recognised for allowing us to look at this document.
Now, let me ask you,
one of the main reasons.
Jules, what is it that made you become interested in this topic of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church?
Yes.
What is it that made you...
Sorry, what did you say?
How was it that you came about to have this interest in sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, that you would go to such extremes and make a website and devote so much of your time?
Yes, you're quite right, and it is extreme. I think the birth of the website, you're right, is like the penultimate whatever for me, because I was using social media, whether it was Facebook, Twitter, whatever. I got banned permanently from LinkedIn. There's something that, share with probably Donald Trump. Anyway, but what? Well, I guess a lot was around the Australian Royal Commission into child sexual abuse, and also George Pell, the George Pell trial, which I attended. I was there in just metres away from George Pell when the jury handed down their verdict of 5 guilty verdicts. But how did it all start? Where did the path start? I guess the parish church that I was at was called St Mary's Altona, and the assistant priest there was Father Peter Searson. Now, he's mentioned, I think he's got his own chapter or whatever in the Australian Royal Commission into institutional response to child sexual abuse. So he was an assistant priest, an absolute monster. The other is that I have a friend, and his name is Stephen, and he was an altar boy to Gerald Ridsdale, who is, when Kieran Tapsell mentioned the other day Ballarat, he is one of the most unbelievably vile human beings in that Ballarat diocese. Now, so Stephen was an altar boy to Gerald Ridsdale at St Mary's in Swan Hill. Now, that was in late 1960s. Then in 1971, it was also a church in Swan Hill that George Pell had his first appointment as an assistant priest. And my friend Stephen was an altar boy to both. And so anyway, cut all that short, Stephen is in chapter 3 of Lucy Morris Marr's book Fallen. And so there's a lot behind my desire for the Catholic Church to be held accountable and for them to be transparent and for them to change their laws.
Because you have some personal friends that were personally affected by this. I said because you have some personal friends that were directly affected by this.
Yes.
Right. Now, you mentioned Cardinal Pell. Now,
yes.
His name first came up to me when a member of the Trump administration had taken a trip, and he met with Cardinal Pell when these allegations were about Pell. Then it turned out that Pell actually was hosted the whole trip there and was the guide and the whole. It was the focus of this visit from the Trump administration. But then when the charges came up because of the Australian legal system, they're not allowed to report on ongoing allegations during court trials. Is that correct? Yeah, it's a bizarre. Right. Yeah,
exactly.
Very unusual for Americans to even understand that. Yeah.
Yes, I do, and I understand that. But what it was because there was another trial, and there were two trials. The first trial, it was known as the Cathedral trial. So they separated charges, and they had charges that were related to what they called the first trial was the Cathedral trial. But then there was what was known as the Swimmers trial. And the whole purpose, from what I can understand, the suppression order put in by Judge Peter Kidd was in order for Pell to be given a fair trial. So in other words, if they were to report on the outcome of the first trial, that it could influence the outcome of the second trial. But what happened was the second trial fell over. And so once it fell over, they lifted the suppression order. So when I was in court, yes, sorry.
Yeah, tell us, what were the allegations against Cardinal Pell and what were the ultimate charges against him?
I don't have them in front of me, so I wouldn't want to talk about them without getting them right.
Gotcha.
But at the time, anybody who was attending court, or the journalists or the whatever, the suppression order said they were only allowed to refer to the charges as historical abuse. I don't know. And so, I think I probably won't talk about things that aren't in my head properly.
Okay.
Is that okay, Ed? Yeah?
That's perfectly fine. One of the things I know that was heavy on your heart was about this painting of Angelina Cayenne. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, fabulous. And I don't know how to say her name, and I don't even know whether her name is actually Angela or Angelina. And I don't even know whether her family know what her correct first name is. But, the painting, I took the painting to the Pell trial. And but when I did that, I didn't know the name of it. I didn't know anything about it. It was on my wall with glass, and it had fallen off the wall because the heat in Australia is so bad. Anyway, so it fell off the wall, the glass broke, and it was there, and it was a spur-of-the-moment decision. When I was leaving for the magistrate's court, at the very first day of Pal appearing in court, which would later result in Magistrate Wallington saying, yes, you are going to stand trial, I took the print, and it's a big print. It's a massive print. And so when I was standing in line with everybody to go into the courtroom, they actually confiscated it. I wasn't allowed to take it in. And journalists said to me, what's the name of the painting? And later, when I went home, I thought, well, you're an idiot. You don't even know what it's called. What are you doing? That's just dumb. I mean, so dumb. And I think I told them I thought it was Madonna and Child. That's just what I thought it was. So it was only later that that I researched, and I found out that it's the painting is called Madonnina, and it's by Roberto Ferruzzi. And he saw this girl, Angelina Cian, I don't know how to say it, or, Cian, and she was holding her infant brother Giovanni and holding him close and protecting him from the cold. And he went to Angelina's mother and asked, can I paint her? And apparently at the time, this is in the 1890s, it was very unusual for the mother to allow her daughter to be painted. But anyway, he did. And he entered the painting in the 1897 Venice Biennale, and it won. And it was so popular. The image was just so beautiful and so popular that the Catholics commandeered it. They added a halo, and it's since appeared on stamps. It's on Christmas cards. It's just out there everywhere you look. I find it. I see it, and then what I found out is that Angelina was 11 years of age. And I look at the image and I think it took a child to show the world how to protect another child. And it just reminds me of how the adults failed the children. And so this image is very important to me. And what happened was when my friend Stephen, who was the older boy to Ridsdale and Pell, when he was talking to me with giving me some information, I thought, you know what, I'm going to have to go to Swan Hill myself. I've got a background. Was a trained teacher and a librarian, and research is just something I love. And I thought, right, I'm going to book myself into a hotel, and I'm going to go to Swan Hill, and I am going to dig around. And I did. But the thing is, when I went to St Mary's Church in Swan Hill, they had left the doors open. So normally this church would have been locked, but it wasn't. It was early in the morning, about, 8 o'clock or whatever. So, and I think there was going to be a funeral, and they had it open so the florist could deliver flowers. I learned all this later. But anyway, so I walk in and this church that I'm talking about is where Ridsdale did some of his offending, and it's adjacent to the presbytery where he did a lot of his offending. And so I've come through the glass doors, and on the left is a room, and it's got books in it. And I've looked up, and there's the print. The print is in this room, only it's burnt. It's got a big hole in it, it's singed, and all sorts of things. So later, you could have picked me up from the floor, because I just felt at that minute that I was on the right path. If you're going to be on a path, to me it was a sign. It was literally a sign. I was floored. So what happens then is that I go to the library, I go to the historical centre inside the library, and I found a copy of a book that was co-written by Stephen's mother. And she's written a book, and it was the 100-year centenary of St. Mary's Swan Hill. And in the book, there's a photograph of a nun, and she's holding the charred picture I just looked at the original. This is the nun at the time. And I find out what happens is there was a convent on the same property as the church and the presbytery at the St. Mary's Swan Hill. And the nuns weren't living there anymore, so they'd already left the convent, and it had been rented, or not rented out, the community was using it, but somebody had left something electrical on, and it had caused a fire. And so that convent was raised, and the picture of Madonnina was the only thing that they saved out of the ashes of the fire. And this is the church that George Pell, in 1971, had his first appointment as assistant priest. I just say that because it meant a lot to me at the time. So
that is fascinating, because it comes full circle, because you brought that actual painting, or a copy of the painting to the trial there. I wonder if George Pell recognized the painting, if he would have seen you standing out there in line without a heart attack. But let me ask you a question, because you mentioned how someone in the Catholic Church had actually added a halo. Now, did they actually paint over the original painting?
Oh, in terms of the original painting, I don't think anyone even knows where that is now.
Gotcha.
There's talk that it ended up in the bottom of the ocean. Like, it would be amazed if the original painting was found, right? But no, what I mean is in terms of like the actual image. So here's, how they probably had prints and whatever. Well, from what I understand is that a halo was added. So if you were to Google Madonnina, you will actually find pictures without the halo, which was the original Roberto Ferruzzi painting. But if you add Madonnina and halo, you will then see what I mean in terms of what it looks like when they added the halo.
Gotcha. And if people go to the website, pontificalsecret.com, they'll see this painting with the halo rather prominently, and the explanation, too, about the whole thing about how it's portrayed to be the Virgin Mary and infant Jesus when it's actually not. Yeah, fascinating.
That's right. It is great.
Now, also, too, I noticed here on the website, too, you have some mention of a film called The Altar Boys, or a book called The Altar Boys?
Oh, Susie Smith. Yes. I haven't read Susie's book. I've read, a few books, but that is one that I haven't read. But I want to read it. Yeah. Mm.
Well, give us the drift. What's it about?
From what I can gather, there was a journalist, I think, an ABC journalist, and I think he was a victim of child sexual abuse, and I have a feeling he may have been Susie's friend. And I don't know, I think he may have committed suicide, and I don't know a lot. As I said, I haven't read it. And Susie, like myself, has personal reasons for writing the altar boys, that story. So,
let me ask you this question here. Considering that we had Kieran Taspel on the show, and he was talking about how they lowered the age of confessions down to 7 years old, and this whole practice of altar boys. Considering now that we have there's so much focus, when you hear Catholic Church, really this is the first thing you think about, is these abuses going on, the systemic abuses. Wouldn't it be, wouldn't it seem logical that they would increase the age of the first confessional back maybe to 12, 15 years old? And this practice of altar boys, they could have altar men, grown men up there, or helping, or women helping, instead of boys, little boys. Wouldn't that be a wise practice to end those two?
It's funny that you should bring that up, and I don't have a view on any of it, except to say that Kieran Tapsell, when he talked to you the other day, he talked about culture and laws. And he really has impressed on me the importance of canon law. It's like, it doesn't matter. It does not matter if Pope Francis calls it clericalism. It doesn't matter about any of it. And I mean, the reason I believe that canon law must change is because Pontifical secret proves it works. Because you think about it, they put that document out, they put it out and they said, sorry Ed, I'm just going to reference it again, where they said to be diligently stored in the secret archives of the Curia as strictly confidential, nor is it to be published nor added to with any commentaries. I mean, it worked. Where did you hear about it? You didn't hear about it. They were under threat of excommunication. It's like, it was only on Pope Francis' 83rd birthday when he lifted Pontifical secret in regard to matters relating to child sexual abuse. That at that moment, it's like, right, you've lifted it, but look back to 1922. That whole time, anything related to it was under the secret of the Holy Office, the strictest, most confidential level of secrecy. And it worked. So if that works, then Pope Francis, get your pen out, start writing canon laws that absolutely make change to the point that no child will ever be at risk in the Catholic community.
Yeah,
get your pen out and do it now.
And some immediate changes would be to raise the age of the confessional, would be one, and this altar boy situation, raise the age of that too, to 18 years old, let's say. What's wrong with that? You know? But anyway, go ahead.
Yes, that's right. No, sorry, I actually don't know enough about those sorts of things, but I just know that I'm following quite a lot that's going on in the United States in regards to the shifting of assets, the declaring Chapter 11 bankruptcy, the things when you get legislators trying to put laws through in America to increase look-back windows, or when they're saying, okay, they're hearing about child sexual abuse in the confessional, but guess what? We're going to keep them under clergy privilege. We're not mandating that they have to report. It's like, no. Okay, make it canon law. You have to do this, Pope Francis, because you're the only one at the moment who can. And so I'm rambling a bit.
No, that's fine. But you know, Jules. no, you're fine. One of the things that's always struck me is if you have a local, because I grew up in the Bronx and I went to Catholic grammar school, and so I'm very familiar with the culture of there was a convent there, and there was a priest there, and then we had a school.
Right. Yep.
And now when we're talking to Mr. Caspel, you talk about they even have hospitals. They got their own hospitals. They got a little bit of everything going on. They have their own radio stations. They have an iHeart Radio own thing. Right.
That's right.
Now the thing is, though, if there's a scandal in a local church with a local priest, and it just turns out that local priest and the Monsignor at that local parish there have been hearing the confessions of, let's say, the local police chief or the local prosecutor or the local sergeant on the beat down there, who maybe can prevent the case from going to a detective, that seems to be a lot of, if they're confessing to that priest and that priest has some information on them, maybe something they cheated on their wife or something, or other crimes similar to the ones that they're being charged with. It seems to be rife for abuse there.
You're describing a viper's nest.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Put a lot of faith in these people. Now, Ms. Cameron, you wanted to tell us about how all your devotion and your passion for your work here in protecting children in this from abuse in the Catholic Church, how it's affected your relationship with your family.
Thanks, Ed. Well, it's one of those situations where sometimes I feel like I'm on a what's the word? Like it is a juggling balance, because I'm very mindful, for example, of my ma. And what happened with my mum over the years is that I would sit her down, I'd take her by the hand, and I'd say, "Ma, you know, there's some stuff I don't want to have to talk to you about, but it's important that I do." And my mum is just such a believer in truth, and she believes in justice. And so because I've taken her with me, I guess, I feel that that she's with me, and she even prays. Like, she's probably out. I'm looking after my mum now. She's probably in her room now praying that I get through this interview. She's just a beautiful lady. And but what happened, and what I would really dearly love to tell you, is that a man by the name of Gerard O'Connell, who's a Vatican journalist, he contacted me because of Madonnina, which is also known as Madonna of the Streets, the painting that we've been talking about. He contacted me out of the blue because he thought I was an art historian, which killed me, cracked me up. I mean, it was just incredible. But anyway, what that did was it put me in touch with this man, and he has become such, I think the world of him and his wife is Elisabetta, but at the time when he contacted me, and for months after, and it's been a couple of years now, is that I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know that his wife, Elisabetta, is the person in a movie about the Pope. I didn't know that Joe Bergoglio, before he was Pope Francis, baptised 2 of his children. So I didn't know any of this stuff. But he wrote a book about the Pope and the conclave of 2013, and I bought it. And around the same time, my poor mother had a fall and she broke her hip, and that was April Fool's Day, 2019. And she was very ill for 4 weeks, and she came home on May Day. And when she came out of the hospital, I think she had post-operative stress. She was so sick. Not only was she broken, like her hip was broken, but she was broken. Anyway, to try and explain, she really wanted God to let her off her mortal world. And I'll try and say it a different way. My poor ma wanted to die. Anyway, so this was awful for me. You've got no idea how stressed I was. And but I sat her down and I asked her, could I record her prayer? So she let me. And then I said to her, Ma, may I send it to our friend Jerry? And I emailed Jerry and I sent it to him, and I said, Jerry, can you please help me? This is what's going on with Mum at the moment. Could you do me a favour? Could you print off Mum's prayer, and could you please put it in the Pope's pigeonhole? So anyway, that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek when I said that. But anyway, Jerry writes back and he says, oh, I think I can do something better than that. And that he was going to be on the papal plane with Pope Francis on his way to Bulgaria. And he said, leave it with me. So anyway, the next day I get a photograph sent via email from Jerry of the moment. He gets another journalist, I think, to take the picture of the moment he's printed off Mum's prayer, he's put it in an envelope, and he has handed it to Pope Francis. Now, the thing about all that is, because I just value Jerry and his wife Elisabetta and his children and his family so much, and because I know how much they love Pope Francis, my brain says, you know what? I know this guy, Jerry. I take on how he feels about Pope Francis. So I want to give Pope Francis a break. That's why on the website I thank him for lifting Pontifical secret on his 83rd birthday. Since he's had some other things. He's had Vos Estis, Lux Mundi. He's had a handbook put out. But the thing is, I'm very ambivalent about Pope Francis, because when the High Court of Australia overturned the jury verdict in regard to George Pell, that day after it was announced, Pope Francis made some comment, or he put it out there about false accusations. Now, Pope Francis never ever listened or heard Witness J's evidence. I just felt it was the most awful, shocking thing to do, and disrespectful of all the people, the child sexual abuse victims and survivors, and especially in Australia, and not just the rest of the world. And so it made me really angry. And I did write to Jerry at the time and just say, you know what, that was wrong. It was wrong. Pope Francis really dropped the ball when he did that. And so, yeah, it's hard. It's hard. You got people who support Pope Francis and what he's doing, and largely I do, but not in entirety. He's got to do more, and he has got to move along the changes to canon law. He has to. He's got to stitch it up. He's got to make it so that there is not a loophole. There's no plug that isn't, he needs to plug all the laws.
Well, let me ask you this, but you believe he's doing a better job than the previous Pope, Ratzenberger,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Now, and it's very unusual
yes.
for a Pope to resign. Do you make anything of that the Pope resigned?
I don't know no, you're right. I don't know very much about it, but you know what? Things go in my mind, and I think to myself, what was going on? Did Ratzinger or Pope Benedict, right. Were things too difficult for him? Was he sick? Like, what was going on there? I don't know. But it's funny that you should mention that, because do you know what? The book that Jerry wrote, Gerard O'Connell, he actually details the fact that Joe Bergoglio was in his home the very night when Pope Benedict passed through a set of doors, and when the Swiss guard leaves, that's the moment that Pope Benedict was no longer the Pope. Well, you wouldn't believe it. Joe Bergoglio, he's in Elisabetta and Jerry's home. This is in his book. I only know about it because it's in his book. But the night that Pope Benedict is no longer the Pope, and they're standing there watching it on the television screen, and little did any of them know that they were standing next to the next Pope, who would become Pope Francis.
Fascinating. Let me ask you.
I love it.
Yeah, no, but let me ask you, you're so wrapped up in the Catholic Church, the intricacies and really the leadership.
Yes.
But you're not a practicing Catholic anymore. How do you express your faith? How do you express your faith?
Yes. Okay. And do you know what, Ed? There's a lady who gives Mum communion. She's a volunteer. She would be here today giving it to Mum right now, except I rang and said, is it okay, can we change the day? And she actually came yesterday. The thing is, there are amazing people in the Catholic Church, the most beautiful people who give, they're generous, and how important it is when she comes and gives Mum communion, how happy it makes Mum. That makes me happy. And in Australia, we've got Father Kevin Dillon. So when I mentioned earlier about St Mary's Altona, we had both ends of the spectrum. We had Father Peter Searson, but we also had Father Kevin Dillon. And Father Kevin Dillon launched the Lifeboat Foundation, which is a foundation to help the survivors and victims of child sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. Now, he did that inside the Catholic Church. But as for me, I don't know. I just think I'm an airhead, Ed. So in terms of spirituality, I don't know. Maybe there's not much there. Honestly, I don't know. I can't answer it, because I suppose I get a lot of my joy by just going by the beat of my own drum.
But you don't have a church membership in any kind of church or fellowship or body of Christ?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
And do you miss it?
Nope. Haha. No.
You don't?
No. Oh, can I tell you what happened when I
Sure.
left the church?
We
And
have time.
what made me leave the church? Have we got time? You sure?
We do, yeah.
Sure we got
6
time?
minutes, yeah.
Okay, it's quick. How many?
No, we have about
Sorry,
6
yeah?
minutes.
How many?
Six.
Okay, gotcha. Right. Well, what happened was I actually taught in a Catholic school. But my first appointment was a teacher librarian in a Catholic school. I was a practicing Catholic. I was married in a Catholic church. And then, after I was married, so I was in my mid-20s, a priest turned up at my home. I lived in a tin shed. He came in and he spoke disparagingly about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And when he left, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I thought, how does this man of the Church of the Cloth come in here and say the things that he has said without knowing who I am and know, and how did he think that it was okay to say these things to me? What made him think that it was okay? Anyway, when I shut that door, that was the moment that I made a decision that I was no longer a member of the Catholic Church. And I just stepped away, and I've never looked back, ever. Not once.
And you said at the time you were living in a tin shed?
Yep. Oh, no, we had a... yeah, I did, I was.
How old were you?
It was a property, like... I was in my early 20s. It was my husband and I at the time, I'm not married now, we bought a 6-acre property, and we built, well, he built a shed with my help, and anyway, so we lived in the tin shed with the plan that we would to do that and then build the house.
Sure.
And back in the day, I mean, the laws weren't like they are today, like you'd never get away with it today. And so, yeah, but I used to think it was like a tin shed that could have been on the front cover of Shed Beautiful. I mean, it
Now, what about with...
yeah.
Did your tin shed have running water and plumbing and electricity?
Well, I had, we had, well, no, not in that way. So, yeah, I don't know how Brendan did it, but there was a shower, there was a bath, there was water to the sink. Yep, we had all that. The toilet was outside. That was a little bit tricky, but that wasn't connected. But, yeah, that was right. I can't think why I'm even thinking about it. So, yeah.
Just a fascinating life. Okay, and the website once again is called pontificalsecret.com. You can go to pontificalsecret.com and you can look up all this stuff about this fascinating story about the Madonnina, the Roberto Ferruzzi painting that's been kind of hijacked by the Catholic Church, and they put a halo on there in order to represent the Virgin Mary. Fascinating story there. A lot of references to Kieran Tapsel's book, The Pontifical Secret Over Child Sexual Abuse. A lot of content on there too, and much content. All stuff about the apostolic letter, about the like I said, the altar boys. And once again, we want to plug this film that you can check out called Sipe, Sex, Lies, and the Priesthood. It's about Richard Sipe, and you can find it at the Salem Film Festival website, and it's about $10 to download that and watch that for a couple of days. Before we go, do you want to leave us with anything?
Yeah, sure. Could I also please mention a PhD research through Queensland University of Technology done by Dr. Sally Moitian. And what she's done, she has mapped the incidences of the child sexual abuse in the Ballarat Diocese and Melbourne and Victoria, I think it is, and it is amazing. And the concept of it needs to be global. It needs to go right across the world, because when you see how they shifted and where they shifted them, for example, Peter Searson, the priest who was in my parish, he ended up at a place called Doveton Parish, and it was a dumping ground. And do you know what? For all their secrets, for all their pontifical secret, you can't hide this data, and it is speaking volumes.
Jules Cameron, also known as Jules McGool. One more time, you can find her at the Twitter there, but also too, check out her website, pontificalsecret.com. Miss Cameron, your passion just pours through the microphone here. I can't thank you enough for your contributions today. And if something new comes up, just give us a call. We'll put you right back on the air, okay?
Ed, thank you.
Really has been a pleasure. Good night.